The green room at Soul Train Studios felt suffocating. Prince sat in the corner chair, purple velvet jacket damp with sweat, hands trembling. 24 years old, 3 albums deep, but tonight felt like the end of everything. Frank Zappa had just destroyed him on national television in front of 60 million viewers. You're nothing but a confused kid playing dress up, making noise and calling it music. In 30 minutes, he'd have to walk back onto that stage. But what Prince didn't know was that this moment of devastation would become the catalyst for the greatest transformation in music history. October 15, 1983. Soul Train was the most important music platform in America. Prince had fought for years to get this booking. Warner Brothers had been hesitant. He's too weird for Soul Train, they'd said. Too rock for black audiences, too black for rock audiences. But Prince had insisted. What he didn't expect was Frank Zappa sitting in the green room when he arrived. Frank Zappa was 43 years old, a musical genius who'd spent 2 decades refusing to compromise. He'd seen young artists come and go, watched the music business chew them up and spit them out. When he looked at Prince that afternoon, he saw everything he despised: style over substance, image over integrity, marketing over music. "You're the kid they're all talking about," Zappa said, not looking up from his newspaper. Prince straightened his shoulders. "Yeah, I'm Prince. Big fan of your work." "Are you?" Zappa fixed him with an X-ray stare. "Tell me what you like about it." Prince's mind went blank. The complexity, the... "You don't know my music," Zappa said flatly. "You know my reputation." The conversation should have ended there, but something in Zappa's dismissive tone ignited a fire Prince didn't know he had. "I know enough to know you think you're better than everyone else," Prince shot back. "I know you sit in judgment because you're threatened by what we represent." Zappa's eyebrows rose. "And what exactly do you represent?" "Evolution," Prince said, standing up now. "Music that doesn't fit into categories. Music that makes people feel something instead of just impressing them." The temperature dropped 10 degrees. Zappa set down his coffee cup. "Kid, let me tell you something about evolution. Real evolution requires understanding what came before. It requires respect for the craft, knowledge of fundamentals, years of paying dues. What you're doing isn't evolution. It's revolution without cause. You're a product packaged to seem dangerous when you're actually perfectly safe." Prince's hands clenched into fists. "You don't know anything about my music. I know you can't explain your choices. I know you probably don't write your own arrangements. I know you're more concerned with image than art. And in 5 years, when the next pretty boy comes along, you'll be forgotten." The words hit Prince like physical blows, not because they were cruel, but because part of him feared they might be true. Don Cornelius knocked on the door. "Gentlemen, we're live in 10 minutes. Frank, you're introducing tonight's guest." Zappa stood, straightened his shirt. "My pleasure." As he walked past Prince, he paused. "Try not to embarrass yourself out there, kid. 60 million people are watching." Prince stood alone in the green room, his reflection staring back from the mirror. Purple jacket, ruffled shirt, carefully arranged curls. For the first time, he wondered if Zappa was right. Was he all image and no substance? Was his music really just noise wrapped in pretty packaging? The doubt crept in like poison, contaminating everything he thought he knew about himself. Soul Train's iconic opening sequence rolled. The dancers moved through their routine while Don Cornelius's voice filled America's living rooms. "We've got a very special show tonight featuring 2 remarkable artists. First, the legendary Frank Zappa, composer, guitarist, and musical innovator. And then one of the most talked about new artists in music, Prince." The audience applauded politely for Prince's introduction, but it was nothing compared to the thunderous response Zappa received when he walked onto the set. Zappa took the microphone from Don Cornelius with the confidence of someone who'd earned every bit of respect he commanded. "Tonight, we're supposed to celebrate the future of music," he began, his voice carrying across the studio with surgical precision. "We're supposed to get excited about innovation, about artists who push boundaries. But I have to ask, what happens when pushing boundaries becomes just another marketing strategy? What happens when rebellion becomes a pose?" The studio audience shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the typical Soul Train introduction. I'm here tonight with a young man who represents everything the music industry wants you to believe is revolutionary. He's been marketed as dangerous, as different, as the future of music. But when you strip away the costumes and the controversy, what's left? When you remove the image and the attitude, is there actually any substance underneath? The camera found Prince in the wings, his face a mask of controlled fury and growing panic. 60 million viewers could see him, could see the doubt creeping into his expression. Ladies and gentlemen, Zappa continued, I present to you the future of music. Let's see if he can live up to the hype. Prince. The applause was scattered, uncertain. Prince walked onto the Soul Train set feeling like he was walking to his execution. The studio lights seemed harsher than usual, the audience more judgmental. He could feel their skepticism, their curiosity to see if this weird kid from Minneapolis could back up his reputation. Don Cornelius tried to smooth the tension. Prince, welcome to Soul Train. Exciting to have you here. Thank you, Don. Good to be here. Prince's voice was steady, but anyone watching closely could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands moved restlessly. Frank's introduction was quite something, Don continued. How do you respond to the suggestion that you're more image than substance? This was the moment. Prince could play it safe, deflect with humor, avoid confrontation. But Frank Zappa sat 3 feet away, that knowing smile on his face, waiting for Prince to prove his point about young artists being all flash and no foundation. I respond by letting my music speak for itself, Prince said finally. But Frank seems to think he knows my music better than I do. Maybe he'd like to test that theory. Zappa leaned forward, intrigued despite himself. What kind of test? You tell me what's wrong with my music, specifically, not vague criticisms about image and marketing. Tell me what's musically deficient about what I do, and I'll tell you exactly why I make every choice I make. The challenge hung in the air like smoke. Don Cornelius looked between them, recognizing television gold when he saw it. Frank, you want to take that challenge? Gladly, Zappa said. Let's start with your harmonic structure. Most of your songs rely on predictable chord progressions, borrowed from funk and R&B cliches. There's no innovation, no complexity, no challenge for the listener. It's music designed to be instantly digestible rather than artistically meaningful. Prince felt his confidence returning. This was territory he understood. You want complexity? 1999 uses a chromatic descent in the bridge that modulates through 3 key centers while maintaining the same bass line. The harmonic rhythm changes every 8 bars to create tension without losing the groove. That's not a cliche. That's sophisticated composition disguised as pop music. Zappa paused. That wasn't the response he'd expected. One song doesn't establish a pattern. Fine. Little Red Corvette uses displaced meter. What sounds like 4/4 is actually alternating bars of 7/4 and 9/8. The guitar solo is built on a mode borrowed from Indian classical music. Delirious layers 3 different rhythmic patterns that only align every 12 bars, creating a sense of controlled chaos. You want me to continue? The studio audience was completely silent. This wasn't what anyone had expected from the weird kid in the purple outfit. Zappa studied Prince with new interest. Impressive. But technical knowledge doesn't equal artistic vision. Anyone can memorize theory. The question is whether you understand why you're making those choices, whether they serve the music or just show off your cleverness. Every choice I make serves the emotion of the song, Prince replied. The complexity in 1999 reflects the anxiety about the future. The displaced meter in Corvette mirrors the disorientation of desire. The chaos in Delirious is the chaos of falling in love. I don't add complexity to impress people like you. I add it because the emotion demands it. Something shifted in Frank Zappa's expression. The condescension was still there, but it was mixed now with respect, with recognition. He was looking at Prince differently, seeing something he hadn't expected to find. That's actually quite sophisticated, he admitted slowly. But here's what I don't understand. If you have this level of musical knowledge, this depth of artistic intention, why do you hide it behind the costumes and the controversy? Why let people think you're just another pretty face with a gimmick? The question hit Prince like a physical blow, not because it was cruel, but because it was honest. Because it forced him to confront something he'd been avoiding. Because Prince started, then stopped. The truth was complicated, painful, wrapped up in years of being told he was too weird, too black, too white, too much of everything to fit anywhere. Because the music industry doesn't want complexity from someone who looks like me. They want me to be safe or dangerous, but not both. They want me to fit into a category they can market. So I give them the image they expect while hiding the substance underneath. That's a coward's approach, Zappa said, but his voice was gentler now. You're allowing their limitations to define your artistry. You're so concerned with their expectations that you're not showing the world what you're actually capable of. The words stung because they were true. Prince had spent years trying to navigate other people's expectations, trying to be palatable enough to get on radio, while different enough to stand out. In the process, he'd lost sight of his own artistic vision. "So what do you suggest?" Prince asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The studio audience leaned forward. 60 million viewers held their breath. This moment had transcended entertainment. This had become something real, something raw, something that mattered. "I suggest you stop caring what they think," Zappa said. "I suggest you make the music you want to make, the way you want to make it, and let the chips fall where they may. I suggest you trust your audience to be smart enough to appreciate complexity, deep enough to understand emotion, sophisticated enough to handle real artistry." Prince felt something breaking inside him, not breaking down, breaking open. Years of compromise, years of calculation, years of trying to thread the needle between too much and not enough, all cracking apart. What if they don't accept it? What if the real me is too much for them to handle? "Then they're not your audience," Zappa replied, "and you'll find the people who are. But you'll never find them if you don't show them who you really are." Don Cornelius, sensing the moment, made a decision that would change television history. "Prince, you brought your guitar. Would you like to play something? Something that shows us who you really are?" Prince looked at his guitar case in the corner, then at Frank Zappa, then at the camera. 60 million people waiting. This was his moment, not to prove Frank Zappa wrong, but to prove himself right, to show the world what he was capable of when he stopped hiding behind expectations and started expressing truth. He picked up his guitar, walked to center stage, and began to play. Not 1999, not Little Red Corvette, not any of the songs people expected. Instead, he played something new, something raw, something that came from the deepest part of his artistic soul. The music that poured out was complex and simple, sophisticated and accessible, innovative and emotional all at once. It was Prince without compromise, without calculation, without fear. For 4 minutes and 37 seconds, 60 million people watched an artist transform before their eyes. Watch someone stop pretending and start being. Watch the birth of the Prince who would create Purple Rain, Sign of the Times, 1999, and every other masterpiece that followed. When the music stopped, the studio erupted. The soul-trained dancers were on their feet, tears streaming down their faces. Don Cornelius stood applauding, speechless for one of the few times in his career. And Frank Zappa, the man who had come to destroy Prince, rose from his chair and clapped slowly, deliberately, with the respect of one artist recognizing another. "That," Zappa said into his microphone, "is what evolution sounds like. That's what happens when you stop hiding your light under a bushel and let it shine." Ladies and gentlemen, you just witnessed something special. Remember this moment, because this young man is going to change music forever. Prince stood center stage, guitar still humming with feedback, feeling like he'd been reborn. The fear was gone. The doubt had evaporated. For the first time in his career, he knew exactly who he was and what he wanted to say. After the show in the green room, Frank Zappa approached him one final time. "Kid, I owe you an apology. I came here tonight planning to expose you as a fraud. Instead, I discovered you're an artist, a real one. Don't let them change that. Don't let them box you in. Keep making music like what you just played, and you'll leave a mark on this world that'll outlast both of us." Prince shook his hand. "Thank you for pushing me, for making me remember why I started making music in the first place. Just promise me one thing, Zappa said. Promise me you'll never again hide who you are to make other people comfortable. The world needs your truth, not their version of you. That night changed everything. Within a week, Prince had fired his management team, renegotiated his recording contract, and started work on what would become Purple Rain. The scared young man who'd walked into Soul Train Studios that afternoon was gone, replaced by an artist who understood his power, his purpose, and his responsibility to his art. Frank Zappa's brutal honesty had shattered Prince's false confidence. But in doing so, it had revealed the real confidence underneath. The confidence that comes from knowing who you are and being willing to show the world that truth, regardless of consequences. Frank Zappa died in 1993. Prince played at his memorial service, performing the same song he'd played that night on Soul Train. After the performance, Zappa's widow Gail approached him. Frank never forgot that night, she said. He talked about it often, about how you taught him something about the power of pushing people toward their truth, rather than pushing them away from it. He was proud of the artist you became. He said that night on Soul Train was one of the most important things he ever did, because he helped reveal who you really were. When Prince died in 2016, the clip from that Soul Train appearance played on screens around the world. 60 million people had watched it live in 1983. Now millions more watched it as part of his memorial. Watch Frank Zappa challenge Prince to be real. Watch Prince rise to that challenge and transform before their eyes. That 4-minute performance became the template for everything that followed. The fearless artistry, the genre-defying innovation, the refusal to be categorized or contained. Today, that Soul Train episode is studied in music schools as an example of what happens when an artist stops hiding and starts revealing. Students watch Prince's transformation, see the moment when manufactured confidence becomes real confidence, when image becomes identity, when performance becomes truth. They see what's possible when you stop trying to be what others expect and start being who you actually are. That night, Frank Zappa set out to destroy Prince. Instead, he helped create a legend. Sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is the courage to stop pretending and start being real. Even if it hurts, even if it's scary, even if it means risking everything you thought you wanted for the chance to become everything you're meant to be.